So, Ruben Selles is the new Sheffield United manager, and a lot of Blades fans are not happy. Now, obviously, they got rid of Chris Wilder, which was very, very harsh. 92 points won. He got what it meant to be a Sheffield United fan. He just got the club.
I love my club.
And they're replacing him with a manager who had a 31% win percentage at Hull City when he only managed 28 games. However, I am going to try and rise above the noise. We're going to ignore the fact that Chris Wilder may have been harshly done by to be sacked. And we're going to look at what Sheffield United can expect under Ruben Selles from both a tactical perspective and a player profile perspective. Who's going to thrive, who needs to be coming in, all that jazz. And we're also going to cover his strengths and some of the weaknesses of his system as a coach. Before we delve into Ruben Selles' system, what formations he's going to want in and out of possession, who's going to be setting up where, I think it's best if we establish his actual philosophy. Who is he? What are his ideas? Well, Selles isn't the typical championship manager. Usually we see managers at the top end of the second tier who have a set way of playing. Whether it was Scott Parker's Burnley, who had that really defend first mentality and always sat back in a mid to low block to stop goals going in, or Daniel Farke's Norwich City or Leeds United, where they were playing very possession-dominant, attacking-based football. But Selles is different. Yes, he has his ideas, and we're going to touch on them in a little bit, but he doesn't have a specific style. Selles wants his team to be extremely fast-paced, whether that's in possession with direct balls into feet or into the channels, or if it's in the press, with his sides often being incredibly energetic and aggressive without the ball. Everything about Selles' system is about causing damage. If you've got the ball at the goalkeeper's feet, how can you, as quickly as possible, and maximise the damage from that position? If the right fullback's got it, how can we hurt them? If the winger's got it, how can we get in behind and be a nuisance? Equally, when they don't have the ball, they're still trying to find ways to cause damage and make opportunities for their team. I mean, there was an interview that came up from Harley Dean, and he said Ruben Selles told the team when he was there, just run through them, don't stop. Which summarises the way Ruben Selles wants his teams to play. Aggressive. As aggressive as possible. Moving on now though, and we've established the kind of ideas behind Ruben Selles' system, how he wants his sides to look, what are the kind of core concepts to his football, but how does he actually get that out of his team? Well, in possession, it was often this three at the back with a lone six sitting just in front of the two number 8s who were operating in the half spaces to try and act as pivots for his side to break the defensive lines and therefore break the opposition down. Having the two number 8s in these advanced roles also means they can get really close to centre forward and the wingers to form little triangles in them attacking areas, but also in the middle of the pitch. These triangles allow for very close spacing of players and therefore really, really nice 1-2 touch football. They receive it, they'll go for a quick 1-2, get in behind, and you've gone through the opposition's defensive line or the press higher up the pitch. And that's very, very common in Ruben Selles' football. Quick, minimal touch football to burst through defensive or midfield lines. Now, the spacing of the midfielders is very, very close proximity to other players, whether it's the number 8s being relatively close to the number 6 being relatively close to the fullbacks and the centre halves, or them number 8s hugging the wingers, whatever. It's all about finding them nice little passing patterns, just stuttered there, the little passing patterns to get in behind. And it's not just them though. The centre forward also has a big role to play in this type of football. The type of striker play that's needed to fit into a Selles system is a really complete forward who can run the line, drift into pockets, come into midfield, and just be a bit of a busy bee, as cringe as that sounds, which requires the player to be quick and able to burst away over short distances, but also be physically strong enough and technically capable to hold defenders off when under intense pressure and find ways to have a turn and run or link up play. You see here the central player in the attack drops in, receives the ball and fires the ball out wide, which drags out the Derby centre half, and if done properly, could have created a really, really nice chance for Hull City to get in behind. But that's the problem here. That's the problem with Ruben Selles' Hull City side, if done properly. As much as Selles has some really nice in-possession ideas in theory, it didn't really translate too well to the squad he had at Hull City, at least not when he had the ball, because the way he demands from his players in possession, the whole squad just simply weren't technically good enough or even physically good enough to play that 1-2 touch, quick, fast stuff with the ball at their feet, which is what led to them not necessarily being the most exciting going forward, because They didn't really keep the ball all that much. They would try and play that 1-2 touch stuff. Players would make the wrong moves. Players wouldn't be able to control it, tight to the feet, and they would lose the ball, which meant attacking became a little bit tedious. But obviously the quality of the Sheffield United team is entirely different, so you'd imagine that probably won't be the case, but I'll touch on that in more depth later on. I do want to move on to Ruben Selles' out-of-possession structure, whether that is the pressing or the deeper defensive state of play. Because, yes, again, they didn't have a lot of the ball because they couldn't keep it because they weren't good enough to. But out of possession, they were really, really solid, at least for the position in the league that they were in when he came in. And I'm a big, big fan of his pressing structure. Hull went to Bramall Lane not too long ago and annihilated Chris Wilder's side without having too much of the ball. They had just 39% possession to be exact. But Sheffield United couldn't cope with the Hull press and intensity, which led to a really chaotic game, giving Selles' side at the time a little bit of an advantage over Sheffield United, because Sheffield United have an abundance of quality, at least compared to Hull City. But physically and off the ball, they couldn't compete with the Hull City side and the way in which they were playing. The chaotic game state favoured Ruben Selles' team. But to do that, there was a few risks that needed to be executed perfectly. And that's pretty much what Hull City did. They did things pretty much exactly how Ruben Selles would have wanted out of possession. A lot of the time, Selles often opts to deploy a 4-3-3 zonal press with his side forming somewhat of a central diamond to congest the middle of the pitch and force teams to take play wide into the fullbacks. His wingers often look to cover the centre-backs when the keeper has the ball. The centre midfielders see the fullbacks receiving the ball as a real pressing trigger as they occupy them central spaces, and his own team fullbacks go man-to-man with the wingers to prevent a direct diagonal long ball or an easy pass out from the fullbacks if they get the ball. Now, there is a big task here for a certain role on this pitch, and it's the central midfielders. They have so much work to do in this press, it is untrue. As obviously, they're in the central spaces, as I showed you before, and they are blocking the central passes, but I also mentioned they see the fullbacks as somewhat of a pressing trigger, at least so they did against Sheffield United. Now, the midfielders of the opposition may drop a little bit deep to come and help the ball, but that's why the Hull City midfielders were there, to kind of prevent them passing lanes into midfield. And then when the ball goes out wide, they are sprinting 100 miles an hour to cover the ground left there, to collapse onto the fullback. And with that, the winger often drops in as well to come and support that high intensity press on the fullback to stop them from getting out. However, as much as that high intensity running and collapsing onto the fullback is great to see, it does come with the risks that I mentioned before, and it can leave some massive, massive gaps in the team for the opposition to exploit. And against maybe some of the better opposition in the league, that could be something that we see for Sheffield United to struggle with. The two number 8s covering so much ground and going from central areas to wide areas at high speed means that when they commit to their pressing trigger out wide, gaps in the middle do appear, and the lone 6 is then left with so much ground to cover. We see here, Brereton Diaz has the ball in a wide area, and the number 8 comes across to kind of support the fullback, similarly to how when the number 8 comes across to the fullback, the winger collapses onto him to kind of close the passing angles. But this leaves a nice little pocket of space for an opposition player to pick up, like Callum O'Hare does here, and they can receive the ball and then drive into open space, again, like Callum O'Hare does. So, if the opposition can think smartly, play quick 1-2 touch stuff, there is ample opportunity for them to get through this press and exploit it, but it does require some very, very nice pass and movement and things to be executed absolutely perfectly because of how quickly Ruben Selles' sides close teams down. But I feel like throughout this video, I've quite consistently mentioned the difference in quality between Hull City and Sheffield United. For example, the pressing problems that Hull City may have had where they were getting exploited probably won't be an issue at Sheffield United because they're extremely athletic, extremely physical, and all just better players. Let's just not overanalyze it, you know what I mean? They are just better players. So I feel like I've said a lot, but I've not actually told you what makes them better. So I feel like I want to look now at which types of players could really thrive in a Ruben Selles system, and also which types of profiles need to be getting brought in. Well, straight off the bat, the number 8 are arguably the most important position on the pitch in a Ruben Selles system. We've talked about the absolute pressure on them in and out of possession already in this video. When his teams have the ball, obviously I've said before, it's very direct, very aggressive, but a lot of the time he does encourage players to get the ball and carry it, drive with it, attack open space. And that means that the number 8s are going to have to be capable of receiving on the half turn in tight areas and going, carrying the ball, driving at the opposition. Both the midfielders and the fullbacks need to be capable with the ball at the feet. They need to be able to carry it forward. They need to be able to cause damage. We see here, the ball's picked up wide and it's carried forward and brought into space, which leads Hull City into a nice, dangerous position. And that's something that needs to be really apparent with not just the fullbacks, but most importantly, the number 8s. They need to be capable of receiving on the half turn in tight space, turning, going, running at open space, which is exactly what I feel like a lot of this Sheffield United squad can bring. You know, the likes of Ollie Arblaster, O'Hare, Brooks, Peck are all midfielders of that kind of mould who can receive under pressure, resist the press, then carry the ball forward and create opportunities. And yes, there's going to be a dilemma there of who the hell do you start out at any of them for, but it does bring real nice competition. And on top of the fact that they can carry the ball forward, they're all technically good enough to play 1-2 touch football, like, again, we've already mentioned. However, the big dilemma I have when I'm looking at this midfield is who's going to play in the number 6. Because, yes, Vinny Souza is brilliant. He has had a great season when he's been fit. I'm a big, big fan of Vinny Souza. If you've watched the channel, you'll know that. But Selles has never really played with a defensive monster, an actual defensive midfielder. Instead, he's regularly adopted to using more of a deep playmaker, someone who can receive the ball, resist the press, turn quickly, and then play really good passes into wide men, into the fullbacks, into the number 8, into the striker. And I'm not sure Souza is necessarily of that build. Now, don't get me wrong. If Souza stays, he plays. You know, there's no way he sits on the bench. But if he does leave, I feel like it's going to cause less damage than it would have done under Chris Wilder, because someone like Arblaster or Peck are pretty much the perfect mould of player for a Ruben Selles number 6. They're both very, very energetic, high-intensity players. You can cover them large spaces, like we've mentioned, being a potential weakness. But also, again, the in-possession stuff, they're pretty much perfect. Moving on now, though, I want to look at another position. And I feel like we've touched on it a little bit briefly, and it is the left fullback position, because Harrison Burrows, I feel like, is going to be getting very excited by Ruben Selles' appointment. I think this past season, as much as he had a really big role, I was slightly underwhelmed. Now, that's not because he had an awful season, but I thought he was distinctly average for most part. Other than the playoffs, he was pretty average, and I thought he might have done a little bit better. He's obviously never going to translate from Peterborough, but I feel like under Ruben Selles, he's going to have an incredible season compared to last. I mentioned that idea about ball carrying being encouraged, but that doesn't always work, especially against deeper low blocks. And when it doesn't directly lead to an opportunity, it can often create wide isolations for wingers or fullbacks to then put balls into the box. We see here the ball's gone wide after a ball carry, and Hull create a nice little triangle to create space deeper in the pitch for either an in-swinging ball, like we see here, or an out-swinging cross to be put into the box. Burrows' ability to deliver crosses from advanced wide areas like he did against Bristol City, or from even deeper areas to launch cross into the box, suits this so well, on top of the dynamic of having that left hand side triangle, which we saw a lot this season, and Gus Harmer, Callum O'Hare and Burrows drifting over there. That is one mean trio. I pray for any fullback that has to put up with that, to be honest. But I do want to have a little bit of a rogue shout, because I feel like them two players that I've mentioned already, you know, the midfield and also the fullbacks, are probably common knowledge. People probably rate them already. But I feel the centre forward position, Tom Cannon, it's your time, son. You've had a bit of a rough spell at Sheffield United, but under Ruben Selles, I think Tom Cannon can do really well. Now, he's never going to probably pull back that 10 million figure that they paid for him, but I do feel like he ticks a lot of the boxes here. Cannon's ability to hold off defenders, run the channels, and link up play could work really nicely as that complete striker that we've talked about before. On top of that, he is a good goal scorer. If you give him an opportunity, he will often find the back of the net, which he didn't have too much of at Sheffield United under Chris Wilder. But I feel like his ability to kind of just do a little bit of everything to a high level could be very nice for Ruben Selles. Now, I'm well aware he might not work, and I'll happily admit I'm wrong. If Sheffield United fans disagree with me, fair enough. And then obviously we've got the obvious one again, Tyrese Campbell. If he stays fit, he's banging 20 odd goals under Ruben Selles, and his all-round game, that running the line specifically, that running off the defender's shoulder, it's going to be absolutely unreal. I'm 100% sure. But yeah, I feel Tom Cannon could have a good season. But we've talked about quite a few of the Sheffield United players now and who I think are going to really step up and thrive. But what about recruitment? Because the Sheffield United squad, again, need quite a few reinforcements like they did last summer, specifically in the defence. I am 100% sure they need probably 2 centre-halves and a right-back. And if Hodzic leaves as well, which could be happening, they probably need a 3rd centre-back. But what profile do they need? Well, as a centre-half comes, I feel like they really do need to get themselves an aerially dominant bloke, a Suter-esque type player. But also, they need to be pretty confident with the ball. They need to have the passing range to play diagonals in behind, and also line-splitting passes into the feet of the number 8, the number 6, the striker even, and really be confident in playing them risky passes. Now, the rumours signing of someone like Ashley Phillips is really nice. I really, really like that idea. He's big, he's strong, he's physical, he's decent in the air, very, very confident with the ball at his feet. He would be a top signing for Sheffield United. Had a good season at Stoke, despite Stoke being Stoke. But I feel like he would do really, really well at Sheffield United, Ashley Phillips. That is one that should 100% be getting done. I know it's rumoured, as I've said, but they need to get that done. I then also want to move to the right-back position because I've talked about the importance of Harrison Burrows getting down that line, producing crosses. But I've also talked about earlier in the video, the 3 at the back in possession for Sheffield United. That's probably going to happen like it did at Hull City. Now, it might be a 2 if Ruben Selles is feeling brave, but I feel he's got himself a nice dynamic with the 3. And that means that if Harrison Burrows is going down the line, the right back needs to be able to tuck in and basically be a 3rd centre-half in possession. Now, obviously, there was rumours of Jimmy Doom potentially coming in, and that would have been absolutely incredible. Ex-Burnley player. I'm a Burnley fan. But I also think he would have been very, very nice. But obviously, he signed a new deal. Probably not going to happen. But that is the type of player. Someone tall, physically strong, still able of getting down the line, but really need to be almost another centre-back. So I guess Sheffield United need 4 centre-halves this summer. That's an easy task, innit? Then we have the right winger. Because when you're looking at this squad now, obviously Raksaki's leaving after his loan spell's finished, and Brereton Diaz is not going to be playing on the right wing, and I'm pretty sure he's gone back to Southampton after his loan spell. So you've got really Gus Harmer on the left, which is very, very nice. You know, you could probably play a few other players on the left, and you've got maybe Brooks on the right, but I don't think Brooks is the right profile. I think you need someone who's extremely direct, someone who's got that pace and power, and when he gets the ball, just thinks, I'm running through you, and just run through the man straight towards goal. Just makes things happen, because we've talked about that direct football, the want to try and put people in behind, but also play quick 1-2 touch stuff. Now, it's easier said than done, but a direct, fast winger is an absolute necessity. You know, you can get plenty of them on loan, but it is going to be a risk. And I do believe that is something that Sheffield United will be looking for anyway. A young, dynamic, fast winger that screams this current Sheffield United ownership, doesn't it? So overall, I'm a relatively big fan of this appointment. I think I said a while ago when it first came out that I think it was a good appointment. Now, is it fair to say, well, that no, but I said I'm staying away from that. It's the new kind of era of Sheffield United now. And I do think it's harsh, but Ruben Selles coming in, you could have done so much worse. And I think you will bring a nice attacking brand of football, and maybe his football suits this squad a little bit better than Chris Wilder's did. They might not get 92 points, but it'll be bloody entertaining next season. So if you have enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on Ruben Selles' football. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comments, and I'll try my best to respond. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.